Welcome, traveler, to a story that begins with a prophecy and ends with the death of a son. Imagine a wandering tribe, despised and homeless, arriving in a valley already ancient with the ruins of fallen empires. They owned nothing. They served as mercenaries for stronger peoples. They were given the worst land, a swampy island infested with serpents, and told to survive if they could. Yet within 200 years, these outcasts would rule an empire of 6 million souls, build a city that rivaled any on earth, and create a civilization so powerful that its conquerors could barely believe what they had found. How does a homeless people become master of an empire? What drove the Mexica from refugees to rulers of the greatest power Mesoamerica had ever known? And why, at the very height of their glory, did everything collapse in just 2 years? This is the complete history of the Aztec Empire, and we will walk through every chapter of this extraordinary transformation together. We will begin long before the Mexica existed, in the world of the Olmec colossal heads and the mysterious pyramids of Teotihuacan. We will follow the wandering tribe from the legendary homeland of Aztlan through decades of migration and humiliation. We will witness the founding of Tenochtitlan on that sacred island where an eagle perched upon a cactus, devouring a serpent. From there, we will trace the rise of empire through cunning alliances and devastating conquests. We will meet the warrior emperors who built this power, from Itzcoatl who burned the old histories to Itzcoatl who sacrificed thousands to dedicate the great temple. We will walk the causeways of Tenochtitlan, explore the market of Tlatelolco, where 60,000 people traded daily, and understand the cosmic bargain that demanded human blood to keep the fifth sun alive. We will see how ordinary people lived, from eagle warriors to farmers tending floating gardens, from feather workers creating masterpieces to slaves awaiting their fate. We will understand why the Tlaxcalans remained unconquered enemies and how that failure would doom everything. And finally, we will witness the arrival of strangers from the sea, the impossible choices facing Moctezuma II, and the brutal siege that ended with Tenochtitlan in ruins on the 13th of August, 1521. Yet this story does not end in ashes. Millions still speak Nahuatl today. Mexico City rises atop Tenochtitlan's bones. The eagle and serpent fly on a nation's flag. The Aztec legacy lives. If you are drawn to complete journeys through civilizations that shaped our world, please subscribe and join us each week as we explore another chapter of human history. Now let us step back 5 centuries to a lake shimmering under the Mexican sun and begin this journey. The jungle breathes. Humid air rises from the lowlands of the Gulf Coast, carrying the scent of ceiba trees and distant rain. Here, more than 3,000 years before the Aztec temples will pierce the sky above Lake Texcoco, something unprecedented stirs in the swamps and river valleys of what will one day be called Veracruz and Tabasco. The Olmec emerge from the mist of prehistory around 1,500 years before the Common Era. They are the mother culture, the first great civilization of Mesoamerica, and they leave behind monuments that will endure for millennia. Colossal stone heads, some weighing 40 tons, stare across the centuries with broad noses and full lips beneath helmet-like headdresses. These basalt giants were carved from boulders dragged dozens of miles from volcanic mountains, testimony to organized labor and centralized power that predates Rome by more than 1,000 years. At San Lorenzo and La Venta, The Olmec build ceremonial centers of packed earth and clay. They carve jade into delicate figurines depicting shamans transforming into jaguars. They develop a calendar system and early forms of writing. They worship the feathered serpent and the rain god, deities whose echoes will resonate through every subsequent Mesoamerican civilization. When the Olmec fade around 400 years before the Common Era, they leave behind a template for civilization itself. Centuries pass. The jungle reclaims the great heads. But in the high valley of Mexico, a new power rises that will dwarf everything before it. Teotihuacan begins as a modest settlement around 100 years before the Common Era. By the 1st century of the Common Era, it explodes into the largest city in the Western Hemisphere. The Pyramid of the Sun rises 200 feet above the valley floor, its massive bulk aligned with astronomical precision. The Avenue of the Dead stretches for miles, flanked by temples and palaces painted in brilliant reds and greens. At its peak around 450 years of the Common Era, Teotihuacan holds perhaps 125,000 inhabitants. Merchants from the Maya lands walk its streets. Obsidian workshops produce blades traded across thousands of miles. The city's influence reaches Guatemala, Oaxaca, and beyond. Then, around 550 years of the Common Era, Teotihuacan burns. Whether from invasion, internal revolt, or ecological collapse, the great city dies. Its pyramids stand abandoned, slowly covered by earth and vegetation. But its memory survives. When later peoples discover these ruins, they believe only gods could have built such wonders. They name it Teotihuacan, the place where men become gods. Into this vacuum step the Toltecs. From their capital at Tula, north of the Valley of Mexico, they forge a warrior culture that will become legendary. Atlantean columns depicting armed soldiers stand atop their pyramids. The feathered serpent Quetzalcoatl becomes central to their worship. Toltec artisans perfect metalworking and create distinctive pottery that spreads across trade networks. The Toltec Empire reaches its zenith around 900 to 1100 years of the Common Era. Their influence extends to distant Chichen Itza in the Maya lowlands, where architecture mirrors Tula's warrior columns. But by 1150, Tula too falls to drought, famine, and nomadic invasions from the north. When the Toltec collapse, they leave behind more than ruins. They leave a legacy, a golden age that future peoples will claim as their own. To be descended from the Toltecs will mean legitimacy, nobility, civilization itself. Somewhere in the northern deserts, a wandering tribe called the Mexica will hear these stories and dream of inheriting this mantle. The northern deserts stretch endlessly beneath a pale sky. Dust devils spin across cracked earth, where little grows but thorny scrub and hardy cactus. Somewhere beyond the horizon, in a place that may exist only in memory and song, lies Aztlan, the place of whiteness, the place of herons. The Mexica remember it as an island in a great lake, a paradise of reeds and water birds, where their ancestors lived in 7 caves alongside 6 kindred tribes. Whether Aztlan was a real location in the arid northwest, or a mythic homeland constructed to mirror their eventual island capital, the Mexica carry its image with them across generations of wandering. They are the people who left paradise, driven forth by their fierce patron deity Huitzilopochtli, the hummingbird of the south, god of war and sun. Around 1100 of the Common Era, the migration begins. The Mexica join the great southward movement of Chichimec peoples, nomadic hunters and gatherers who speak Nahuatl and worship sky gods. They carry little: bows and arrows, fiber nets, simple tools, and the sacred bundle containing Huitzilopochtli's image. Priests bear this bundle on their backs, receiving divine commands through dreams and visions. The journey spans generations. Children are born on the trail, elders die and are buried in unmarked graves, and still the tribe moves southward. They pause for years or decades at various settlements, planting crops, building temporary temples, then receiving the gods' command to move again. Place names mark their passage. Coatepec, the Serpent Mountain, where legend says Huitzilopochtli was born fully armed to slay his sister the Moon and his 400 brothers the Stars. By 1200 of the Common Era, the Mexica approach the Valley of Mexico. What they find is no empty land awaiting settlement. The valley cradles 5 interconnected lakes fed by mountain streams, their shores crowded with established city-states. Culhuacan claims descent from the Toltecs. Azcapotzalco dominates the western shore. Texcoco controls the east. Dozens of smaller polities occupy every fertile patch of lakeshore and hillside. The newcomers are unwelcome. To the civilized peoples of the valley, the Mexica appear as barbarians. Poorly dressed, speaking a rough dialect, practicing bloody rituals that offend their neighbors. They wear animal skins while others wear woven cotton. They eat snakes and insects while others feast on cultivated maize. They sacrifice humans with an enthusiasm that disturbs even peoples accustomed to ritual bloodletting. The Mexica spend decades as despised refugees, driven from one temporary settlement to another. They serve as mercenaries for established powers, their ferocity in battle earning grudging respect even as their customs inspire revulsion. At Chapultepec, the hill of the grasshopper, they attempt permanent settlement around 1299, only to be attacked and scattered by a coalition of valley city-states. Survivors flee to the marshes. Some are captured and sacrificed. Others take refuge among the reeds of Lake Texcoco, eating whatever the swamps provide. Fish, frogs, algae, water insects. They become lake people by necessity, learning to navigate shallow waters, to build reed rafts, to survive where no one else wishes to live. The Mexica have reached their lowest point. Homeless, hunted, reduced to swamp dwellers, they possess nothing but their God's promise and their own stubborn refusal to perish. Yet in this very desperation lies the seed of transformation. The skills learned in the marshes will serve them well. The hatred of their neighbors will fuel their ambition. The prophecy remains unfulfilled. They must find the eagle perched upon a cactus, devouring a serpent. The marshes become their world. For years the Mexica drift among the reeds of Lake Texcoco, building temporary camps on mudflats and small islands that barely rise above the brackish water. They learn which plants are edible, which fish can be caught with woven nets, which birds nest among the cattails. The lake provides what the land denied them, sanctuary from enemies who refuse to wade into these mosquito-haunted shallows. Priests watch the sky each dawn. The prophecy of Huitzilopochtli remains their compass through these desperate years. Somewhere in this vast lake system, an eagle waits upon a cactus growing from a stone, a serpent writhing in its talons. Until that sign appears, the wandering cannot end. The year is 1325 by later European reckoning, when scouts paddling through the western marshes report something extraordinary. On a small rocky island thick with nopal cactus, they have seen the sign. An eagle perches there, wings spread against the morning sun, feeding upon prey. The priests are summoned. They paddle through the reeds in silence, hearts pounding with 2 centuries of accumulated hope. The island is unpromising by any practical measure. Rocky, swampy, barely large enough to support a village, surrounded by deeper water that isolates it from the mainland. No trees for timber, no fields for maize, no fresh water springs. Yet when the priests see the eagle rise from the cactus and circle overhead, they know their journey has ended. Huitzilopochtli has chosen this place. Here, the Mexica will build their city. They name it Tenochtitlan, place of the prickly pear cactus. The first structures are humble beyond measure. Reed huts clustered around a small mud platform where the priests erect a shrine to their war god. The shrine is nothing more than a thatched shelter protecting a stone altar, but it marks the spiritual center of what will become the greatest city in the Americas. Survival demands immediate innovation. The island cannot feed its inhabitants through conventional farming. The Mexica adapt techniques observed among other lake peoples, creating chinampas, artificial islands built by layering mud, vegetation, and anchoring willow trees whose roots bind the structure together. These floating gardens, rising just above the waterline, prove astonishingly fertile. The lake bottom mud is rich with organic matter. Crops can be planted year-round in the mild climate. What seemed a curse becomes a blessing. Fresh water poses another challenge. Lake Texcoco is saline, undrinkable. The Mexica must paddle to springs on the mainland, filling clay vessels for the return journey. This vulnerability will later drive them to construct great aqueducts, but in these early decades, water carriers become essential figures in daily life. The surrounding city-states view this swamp settlement with contempt, mixed with relief. The troublesome Mexica have finally stopped wandering, confined to an island where they can cause little harm. Azcapotzalco, the dominant Tepanec power, demands tribute from the newcomers. The Mexica comply, having no choice. They send fish, frogs, waterfowl, and woven reed mats to their overlords. Yet the island location offers strategic advantages that will prove decisive. Surrounded by water, Tenochtitlan is naturally defensible. Causeways can be built to connect it to the mainland, but these causeways can also be cut, turning the city into a fortress. The Mexica begin constructing these raised roads, each one strengthening their connection to trade networks while maintaining their island security. The first temple to Huitzilopochtli grows slowly, stone by stone. Workers paddle canoes loaded with rocks from the mainland. The pyramid rises in stages, each new ruler adding height and grandeur. Beside it, a second shrine honors Tlaloc, the rain god, acknowledging the water that both imprisons and protects them. The tribute collectors arrive with the dry season. They come from Azcapotzalco, the great Tepanec capital on the western shore of Lake Texcoco, and they come expecting payment. The Mexica gather what they have: bundles of lakefish dried in the sun, baskets of waterfowl eggs, rolls of reed matting, and whatever else their island home can produce. It is never quite enough. It is never meant to be. Azcapotzalco in the late 14th century dominates the Valley of Mexico with an iron grip disguised as benevolent lordship. The Tepanec ruler Tezozomoc, who will reign for an almost impossible span of decades, has built a tributary network that stretches across the lake basin. Every settlement, every fishing village, every farming community owes allegiance to his throne. The Mexica are merely one small piece in this vast mosaic of subjugation. Yet Tezozomoc recognizes something useful in these island dwellers. They are fierce, they are desperate, and they have nothing to lose. The Tepanec begin employing Mexica warriors as mercenaries in their campaigns of expansion. When Azcapotzalco moves against rival cities, Mexica fighters march in the vanguard. They storm fortifications, they take captives, they earn a reputation for brutality that both terrifies enemies and unsettles allies. In return, they receive a share of conquered tribute and something far more valuable: legitimacy. The first Mexica Tlatoani, Acamapichtli, takes power around 1376. His selection is no accident. His bloodline connects to the ancient Toltec dynasty through his mother, providing the wandering tribe with a genealogical anchor to Mesoamerican civilization. Tepanec nobles provide wives for this new ruler, weaving the Mexica into the fabric of valley politics through marriage alliances that bind as tightly as any chain. Tenochtitlan grows beneath Tepanec oversight. The Chinampas multiply, those floating gardens of mud and vegetation that transform shallow lake waters into productive farmland. Canals cut through the expanding city in orderly grids. Stone buildings replace reed structures. The temple pyramid rises higher with each passing decade, though it remains modest compared to the great shrines of Azcapotzalco. Mexica warriors train relentlessly. Young men learn to wield the macuahuitl, that fearsome wooden sword edged with obsidian blades, sharp enough to decapitate a horse. They practice with atlatl spear throwers, bows, and slings. They study the tactics of ambush and siege. Every campaign fought for Tepanec masters becomes a lesson absorbed, a technique mastered, a weakness noted. The tribute flows outward from Tenochtitlan, while knowledge flows inward. Mexica priests study the calendar systems and astronomical observations of their overlords. Scribes learn to paint the pictographic codices that record history, tribute, and prophecy. Artisans adopt techniques for working gold, jade, and precious feathers. The island city becomes a student of empire, even as it serves as a tool of empire. Tezozomoc grows old but does not weaken. His political genius keeps the valley balanced, playing factions against each other, rewarding loyalty, crushing rebellion. The Mexica prove useful enough to earn increasing autonomy. They are permitted to expand their island, to build their causeways longer, to conduct their own minor conquests under Tepanec approval. By the early 15th century, Tenochtitlan has transformed from a refugee camp into a genuine city. Perhaps 40,000 people crowd its islands and chinampas. Markets bustle with trade. The temple precinct hosts elaborate ceremonies. A new Tlatoani, Huitzilihuitl, strengthens ties to Azcapotzalco through yet another strategic marriage, wedding a granddaughter of Tezozomoc himself. The Mexica wait. They serve. They learn. And they remember every humiliation, every tribute payment, every moment of subordination. The eagle perches on the cactus, patient and watchful, while the serpent writhes below. The old tyrant dies in 1426. Tezozomoc of Azcapotzalco, who ruled the western shores for decades, who bent the Mexica to his will and extracted their tribute, finally succumbs to age. His death sends tremors through every city ringing Lake Texcoco. Succession struggles erupt immediately among his sons, and the careful balance of Tepanec dominance begins to fracture. In Tenochtitlan, the Mexica watch these developments with calculating eyes. Their Tlatoani Chimalpopoca maintains close ties to Azcapotzalco through his grandmother's blood, but the new Tepanec ruler Maxtla views these connections with suspicion rather than favor. Within months, Chimalpopoca dies under mysterious circumstances. Some whisper assassination, others speak of suicide. The truth matters less than the consequence. The Mexica must choose a new leader in a moment of supreme danger. They select Itzcoatl. He is not young, perhaps 50 years old, the son of the great Acamapixtli by a slave woman. His mixed blood once marked him as lesser, but decades of military service have proven his capabilities. More importantly, he possesses the temperament for crisis. Where others see only Tepanec power, Itzcoatl perceives weakness. Where others counsel submission, he advocates war. The decision splits Tenochtitlan. Many nobles argue for continued tribute, for survival through accommodation. The risks of rebellion seem suicidal. Azcapotzalco commands vastly superior forces. Its subject cities ring the lake. The Mexica remain islanders, dependent on causeways that enemies could easily cut. But Itzcoatl and his nephew Tlacaelel, a brilliant strategist who will reshape Mexica ideology for generations, understand that this moment will not return. They forge secret alliances with other discontented cities. Texcoco, humiliated by Tepanec aggression, joins the conspiracy. Tlacopan, a smaller Tepanec tributary, sees opportunity in upheaval. The war begins in 1428. Mexica warriors paddle across the lake in canoes, striking at Tepanec positions. The fighting proves brutal and uncertain. For weeks, the outcome hangs in balance. Azcapotzalco's forces push back repeatedly, and some Mexican nobles again urge surrender. Itzcoatl makes a fateful promise. Victory will bring land redistribution. The warriors who fight will receive estates from conquered territories. The nobles who counsel submission will lose their privileges. This gamble transforms the war from political rebellion into social revolution. The tide turns. Allied forces encircle Azcapotzalco. The siege lasts over 100 days. When the city finally falls in 1428, the victors show no mercy. Azcapotzalco burns, its population scatters. The Tepanec Empire that dominated the valley for generations collapses in a single season. From these ashes rises something new. Tenochtitlan, Texcoco, and Tlacopan formalize their alliance, dividing conquered territories and future tribute. Tenochtitlan claims the largest share, 2/5, with Texcoco receiving equal portion and Tlacopan the remainder. This triple alliance will endure for nearly a century, though Tenochtitlan will increasingly dominate its partners. Itzcoatl orders the old codices burned, the histories that recorded Mexica humiliation, their years as refugees and tributaries, their service to Tepanec masters, all consigned to flames. New histories will be written. The Mexica will remember themselves as chosen people, destined for greatness, their wandering years recast as sacred pilgrimage rather than desperate flight. The burning codices crackle and curl, painted deer-hide pages blacken and dissolve. Centuries of memory transform into ash and smoke, rising over Tenochtitlan. In their place, priests and scribes compose new narratives. The eagle and serpent become divine mandate. The swamp island becomes promised land. The former tributaries become rightful rulers. By 1440, when Itzcoatl dies, the transformation is complete. The Mexica have become the Aztecs of legend, masters of an expanding domain, their past rewritten to match their present power. The new Tlatoani ascends the reed mat in 1440. Moctezuma I, whose name means he who shoots arrows at the sky, inherits an empire still finding its shape. Itzcoatl's conquests secured the valley, but the world beyond the mountains remains unconquered, its tribute ungathered, its peoples unbound to Aztec will. The early years bring expansion. Aztec armies march east toward the Gulf Coast, where tropical lowlands yield cacao, rubber, and brilliant feathers from birds unknown in the high valley. They push south into the Mixtec highlands, where skilled craftsmen work gold into ornaments of impossible delicacy. Each campaign adds new provinces to the tribute rolls, new goods flowing toward Tenochtitlan along roads guarded by Aztec garrisons. Then the sky turns against them. In 1450, the rains fail. Crops wither in the Chinampas. The following year brings the same drought, and the year after that. By 1454, famine grips the entire valley of Mexico. The Great Lake shrinks, exposing mudflats where fish once swam. Stored maize disappears. Families sell children into slavery for handfuls of grain. Some walk east toward the humid lowlands, hoping to survive as laborers on coastal plantations. Others simply die, their bodies left unburied along causeways. The famine tests everything the Aztecs have built. Moctezuma responds with desperate measures. He suspends tribute from starving provinces. He opens royal granaries. He sends expeditions to distant regions seeking food. The crisis reveals both the empire's reach and its fragility. How quickly abundance can become catastrophe when the rains refuse to fall. When moisture finally returns in 1455, Moctezuma draws lessons from suffering. The empire must grow larger, its tribute base broader, its reserves deeper. Never again will the Aztecs depend on valley harvests alone. The conquests that follow carry new urgency. But expansion creates its own problem. The Aztec military machine requires warriors, and warriors require combat. Peace brings stagnation. Young men cannot earn status without capturing enemies. The gods cannot receive their offerings without prisoners. Yet constant warfare exhausts even victorious armies and devastates productive provinces. The solution emerges through negotiation with Tlaxcala and other unconquered states to the east. Flower wars, the Aztecs called them, Xochiaoyotl. Ritual battles fought by agreement, at appointed times and places where warriors seek captives rather than territory. Both sides gain what they need: prisoners for sacrifice, opportunities for military advancement, maintenance of martial readiness. The arrangement seems elegant, even civilized. At Tenochtitlan, Moctezuma transforms the sacred precinct. The Templo Mayor rises higher, its twin staircases climbing toward shrines of Huitzilopochtli and Tlaloc. Each expansion buries the previous temple within, layer upon layer of sacred architecture accumulating like geological strata. Sculptors carve massive stone monuments. The great calendar stone takes shape, encoding cosmic cycles in volcanic rock. Tribute flows from 80 provinces by the time of Moctezuma's death in 1469. Cotton mantles arrive from the lowlands, 20,000 at a time. Cacao beans come packed in baskets. Jade, turquoise, gold dust, jaguar pelts, eagle feathers, amber, rubber balls, copper bells. Scribes record everything in painted books, each province's obligations precisely specified. The tribute system reshapes distant regions. Conquered peoples must produce what Tenochtitlan demands, reorganizing their economies around Aztec needs. Local rulers remain in power, but answer to Aztec governors. Resistance brings swift punishment. Compliance brings relative peace. though resentment simmers beneath the surface. Moctezuma dies having tripled the empire's size. His successors will inherit both his conquests and his methods. The Flower Wars continue, maintaining the fiction of honorable combat while ensuring steady supplies of sacrificial victims. The tribute networks expand, binding ever more peoples to Aztec demands. The temples grow taller, their dedication ceremonies requiring ever more blood. The architect of expansion leaves behind an empire transformed. What began as desperate survival in the swamps has become systematic domination across central Mexico. The Aztecs no longer merely exist. They rule. The empire rules, and now the empire builds. Where once stood reed huts and mud-flat shelters, stone rises from the water. The transformation of Tenochtitlan from desperate refuge to architectural wonder unfolds across the decades following Moctezuma, the Elder's conquests. Tribute wealth flowing from subjugated provinces finances construction on a scale the Valley of Mexico has never witnessed. The swampy island that sheltered homeless wanderers becomes the canvas for urban engineering that will astonish the world. The chinampas spread outward like green fingers reaching into the lake. These floating gardens represent agricultural genius born of necessity. Workers drive wooden stakes into the shallow lake bed, weaving them together with branches and reeds. They pile layers of lake sediment, decaying vegetation, and rich mud until plots rise above the waterline. Willow trees anchor the edges, their roots binding soil against erosion. Canal networks separate each rectangular plot, allowing canoes to navigate between them while water seeps upward to nourish crops. Maize, beans, squash, tomatoes, and flowers flourish in soil so fertile that farmers harvest multiple times yearly. The Chinampa system transforms the lake itself into productive territory. What other peoples see as obstacle, the Mexica reimagine as opportunity. The city expands not by conquering dry land, but by creating it. Neighborhoods grow outward on artificial ground, each district organized around its own temple, marketplace, and canal network. The population swells as food production intensifies, drawing migrants from conquered territories who seek fortune in the imperial capital. 3 great causeways connect the island to the mainland. The northern causeway reaches toward Tepeyac. The western causeway stretches to Tlacopan. The southern causeway extends to Iztapalapa, incorporating Coyoacan along its length. Each causeway spans thousands of paces across open water, built from stone and rubble fill, wide enough for 8 men to walk abreast. Wooden bridges at intervals allow canoe traffic to pass beneath, while providing defensive gaps that can be removed during attack. The causeways serve as arteries carrying tribute, trade goods, and humanity into the hungry capital. Fresh water presents the greatest challenge. Lake Texcoco's brackish waters cannot sustain the growing population. Engineers construct aqueducts carrying sweet water from springs at Chapultepec on the western shore. Twin terracotta channels run parallel along the causeway, each wide enough for a man's body. One channel flows while workers clean the other, ensuring constant supply. The water enters the city through distribution points, where residents fill vessels for household use. Public fountains serve neighborhoods without direct access. The sacred precinct rises at the city's heart. The Templo Mayor grows taller with each successive renovation, earlier temples entombed within expanding pyramids. Twin staircases climb the western face toward shrines, honoring Huitzilopochtli and Tlaloc. Surrounding temples, schools, ball courts, and priestly residences create a ceremonial complex covering sacred ground. Skull racks display the heads of sacrificial victims. Stone serpents guard stairways. Painted stucco blazes with color against volcanic stone. Canals serve as streets. Canoes carry passengers, produce, and building materials through waterways connecting every district. Foot traffic moves along raised walkways bordering the channels. The city hums with constant motion, water and humanity flowing together through an urban landscape unlike anything else in the Americas. Markets cluster at canal intersections where goods transfer easily between boats and porters. By 1400, Tenochtitlan houses perhaps 100,000 souls. By 1500, that number doubles. The island metropolis becomes one of the largest cities on Earth, its engineering achievements rivaling anything the Old World has produced. The wandering tribe has built a wonder. The wonder demands a heart. At the center of Tenochtitlan, where the city's four great quarters converge, rises the sacred precinct. A walled compound spanning perhaps 400 meters on each side encloses the spiritual core of the Aztec universe. Within these walls, 78 structures crowd together in a forest of stone and stucco, each dedicated to forces that govern existence itself. The Templo Mayor dominates everything. Twin pyramids rise from a single massive base, climbing 60 meters toward the sky in 4 successive stages. The northern shrine belongs to Tlaloc, rain god whose tears feed the Chinampas and whose anger brings drought. The southern shrine honors Huitzilopochtli, the hummingbird god of war and sun who guided the Mexica through their wandering years. These two deities share the summit because they represent the twin pillars of Aztec survival: water for agriculture, war for tribute. Construction never truly ends. Each Tlatoani enlarges the temple, encasing previous versions within new stone shells. Archaeologists will eventually discover 7 major building phases, each grander than the last. The pyramid grows like a living thing, fed by conquest and tribute, its expansion marking the empire's own growth. Moctezuma the Elder adds a phase. Itzcoatl adds another. Itzcoatl will eventually dedicate the greatest expansion of all. Stone arrives from quarries across the valley. Volcanic Tenochtitlan, light and porous, forms the core. Harder andesite provides facing stones. Lime plaster covers everything, painted in brilliant reds, blues, and yellows that blaze under the highland sun. The pyramid becomes an artificial mountain, echoing the sacred peaks that ring the valley, connecting earth to sky through human engineering. Astronomical alignments govern placement. The temple faces west, positioned so that during the spring and autumn equinoxes, the sun rises precisely between the twin shrines. Priests track celestial movements from observation platforms, calculating the complex interlocking of the 260-day ritual calendar and the 365-day solar calendar. Every 52 years, when both cycles align, the new fire ceremony renews time itself atop a nearby hill. Serpent imagery coils everywhere. Massive stone snakeheads flank the stairways, their fangs bared, their bodies suggesting the feathered serpent Quetzalcoatl. Undulating serpent walls define the precinct's boundaries. The creatures represent cosmic forces, earth energy, the connection between terrestrial and divine realms. Skull racks stand near the pyramid's base. The Tzompantli displays thousands of human skulls, arranged in neat rows on wooden poles, the accumulated offerings of years of sacrifice. The structure serves both religious and political purposes, demonstrating Aztec power to visiting dignitaries and reminding subjects of the empire's cosmic obligations. Smaller temples cluster around the Great Pyramid. The circular temple of Quetzalcoatl honors the wind god with its unusual shape, allowing breezes to flow around its curved walls. The Temple of the Sun houses the massive carved calendar stone. Ball courts provide space for the sacred game that reenacts cosmic struggles. Priests' quarters, schools for noble children, and storage facilities for ritual objects fill remaining spaces. The precinct functions as a complete, religious city within the city. Thousands of priests maintain perpetual rituals, their bodies blackened with soot, their hair matted with blood from self-sacrifice. They pierce ears, tongues, and genitals with obsidian blades, offering their own life force to hungry gods. Incense smoke rises constantly from braziers, carrying prayers skyward. At dawn, conch shell trumpets sound from the pyramid summit. Drums beat through the night during major festivals. The sacred precinct never sleeps, its ceremonies marking hours, days, months, and years in an endless cycle of obligation and renewal. Here, at the empire's heart, the Mexica feed the sun that feeds them, maintaining the cosmic bargain that keeps the fifth world alive. The cosmos demands explanation. The Mexica inherit a universe already ancient, shaped by civilizations that rose and fell before their ancestors left Aztlan. Their cosmology weaves together Toltec traditions, Teotihuacan mysteries, and their own fierce theology into a vision of existence both terrifying and logical. 5 suns have illuminated creation. 4 have died. The first sun, Nahuatl, ended when jaguars devoured humanity. The second, Nahuatl, perished in catastrophic winds that transformed survivors into monkeys. The third, Nahuatl, burned away in fiery rain. The fourth, Nahuatl, drowned beneath floods that turned people into fish. Now the fifth sun, Nahuatl, hangs in precarious balance. It will end in earthquakes and famine unless sustained by the most precious substance in existence: blood. The gods themselves bled to create this sun. At Teotihuacan, in the mythic time before time, the gods gathered in darkness after the fourth sun's death. 2 deities leaped into a sacred bonfire to become sun and moon, but the newborn sun refused to move across the sky until the other gods sacrificed themselves, their divine blood setting the celestial machinery in motion. Humanity inherits this debt. The sun requires payment. The priesthood manages this cosmic economy. Young men enter the Kalmakak, the elite schools attached to temples, where they learn the sacred calendar, the proper hymns, the precise rituals that keep reality functioning. They rise through ranks over decades, their bodies increasingly marked by devotion. Priests pierce their earlobes, their tongues, their calves, drawing blood onto paper strips that burn as offerings. The highest priests, the Quetzalcoatl who serve Huitzilopochtli and Tlaloc atop the Templo Mayor, live in perpetual ritual obligation. 2 calendars govern sacred time. The Tonalpohualli, the sacred count, cycles through 260 days, each carrying specific divine influences. Priests consult this calendar for every significant decision: when to wage war, when to marry, when to plant, when to name children. The Xiuhpohualli, the solar calendar, marks 365 days divided into 18 months of 20 days each, plus 5 unlucky days when the cosmos grows thin and dangerous. Every 52 years, these calendars align in the terrifying New Fire ceremony, when all flames extinguish across the empire, and priests kindle fresh fire in a sacrificial victim's chest cavity atop Itzcoatl hill. Human sacrifice operates on multiple scales. The most common victims are war captives, their hearts offered to Huitzilopochtli to strengthen the sun for its daily battle against darkness. Priests stretch victims across the Tenochtitlan, the sacrificial stone, 4 assistants holding limbs while the officiating priest opens the chest with an obsidian knife. The heart, still beating, rises toward the sun. The body tumbles down pyramid steps to waiting attendants who prepare it according to ritual requirements. But different gods demand different deaths. Tlaloc, the rain deity, requires the tears of children, whose weeping summons storms. Zepetotec, the flayed god of spring renewal, receives victims whose skin priests wear for 20 days, the rotting flesh symbolizing seeds bursting from earth. Tezcatlipoca claims a perfect young man each year, one who lives as the god's embodiment for 12 months before ascending the temple steps to meet obsidian. Fire gods receive victims thrown living into flames. The methods match the mythology. The Tzompantli, the skull rack, displays the results. Wooden posts support horizontal beams threaded through thousands of skulls, their empty eyes facing the sacred precinct. Recent excavations reveal the scale: tens of thousands of skulls accumulated over decades, arranged with geometric precision. This is not hidden violence, but public theology, proof that the empire fulfills its cosmic obligations. Codices record these rituals in painted detail. Priest scribes work in red and black ink on deer skin or bark paper, illustrating the proper sequences for each ceremony. The Codex Borbonicus shows the 18 monthly festivals, each requiring specific offerings, costumes, dances, and sacrifices. Knowledge passes through these painted books, and through oral tradition, the priests memorizing vast quantities of hymns, prayers, and procedural requirements. The system possesses internal logic. In a universe where gods died to create humanity, where the sun requires blood to rise each morning, sacrifice becomes not cruelty, but reciprocity. The Mexica feed the cosmos that feeds them, maintaining the balance that prevents the fifth sun from following its predecessors into darkness. Every heart that rises toward heaven purchases another day of existence for the world entire. The empire feeds on war. From the moment a Mexica boy enters the world, his umbilical cord is buried with a miniature shield and arrows, consecrating his destiny to combat. The midwife speaks the ancient words, "You are a warrior. Your home is the battlefield. Your purpose is to capture enemies for the gods." This is not metaphor. This is the organizing principle of Aztec civilization. Military training begins at age 15 in the Tenochtitlan, the House of Youth. Here commoner boys learn the fundamentals: how to grip the macuahuitl, the wooden sword embedded with obsidian blades sharp enough to decapitate a horse; how to hurl the atlatl dart with accuracy at 40 paces; how to move in formation, shield locked to shield, advancing as a single organism across broken terrain. The training is brutal. Boys who show cowardice face public humiliation. Those who excel earn the right to accompany veteran warriors on campaign, carrying supplies, observing tactics, waiting for their moment. The first capture changes everything. A young warrior who seizes an enemy in battle receives the right to wear specific body paint and cut his hair in a distinctive style. 2 captures earn cotton armor quilted thick enough to stop obsidian blades. 3 captures grant access to the Quaucali, the Eagle House, where elite warriors gather. 4 captures elevate a man to the rank of Tequihua, a proven veteran entitled to share in tribute distributions and sit in military councils. The eagle and jaguar warriors represent the apex of this system. These orders draw from both nobility and exceptional commoners, men who have captured 4 or more enemies in battle. Eagle warriors wear helmets carved to resemble the bird of the sun, their bodies covered in feathered suits that transform them into living symbols of solar power. Jaguar warriors don the spotted pelts of the great cats, their faces emerging from feline jaws, embodying the nocturnal power of the earth. Both orders maintain their own temples within the sacred precinct, their own rituals, their own fierce pride. Aztec warfare follows seasonal rhythms. Campaigns launch after the harvest, when granaries overflow and young men stand ready. The army marches in divisions organized by Calpulli, each neighborhood unit fighting under its own banner, its own commanders, its own traditions. Scouts range ahead. Merchants who have traveled the target region provide intelligence on terrain, defenses, water sources. The Pochteca have already mapped the empire's future conquests through their trading expeditions. Battle begins with psychological assault. Conch shell trumpets blast across the field. Drums thunder, warriors shriek and howl, their feathered costumes creating a wall of color and motion designed to terrify. Then come the missiles, sling stones, atlatl darts, arrows darkening the sky. The formations close, the Macuahuitl rises and falls, its obsidian teeth tearing through quilted armor, through flesh, through bone. Yet the goal is not slaughter. The flower wars institutionalize this principle. Arranged conflicts between the Triple Alliance and unconquered states like Tlaxcala serve multiple purposes. They provide captives for sacrifice, they train young warriors in combat, they demonstrate martial prowess without the expense of total war. Both sides agree to meet at designated fields. Both sides fight to capture rather than kill. The warriors who fall become offerings to the gods. The warriors who are taken become offerings as well. Captives represent wealth, status, and cosmic currency. A warrior leads his prisoner back to Tenochtitlan by a rope through the septum. The captive will be housed, fed, even honored before his appointment with the sacrificial stone. The captor gains prestige proportional to his prisoner's rank. Taking a renowned enemy commander elevates a man to the highest circles of Aztec society. The military system produces an empire of tribute and terror. Conquered cities face a choice: submit and pay, or resist and burn. Most submit. The tribute flows. The tribute flows, but so does something else. Beyond the warriors and their captives, beyond the armies that march under feathered banners, another force extends Aztec power across Mesoamerica. They travel not with obsidian blades, but with bundles of goods strapped to their backs. They wear plain cotton rather than jaguar skins. They move quietly through hostile territories where soldiers would be slaughtered on sight. The Pochteca carry the empire farther than any army ever could. These long-distance merchants form a hereditary guild unlike any other class in Aztec society. They live in their own neighborhoods, worship their own patron deity, govern themselves through their own courts. They marry within their ranks. Their children inherit the trade routes their fathers walked. In Tenochtitlan, the Pochteca concentrate in the district of Pochtlan, from which they take their name. Similar merchant quarters exist in Tlatelolco, Texcoco, and a dozen other cities of the Triple Alliance. The Pochteca answer directly to the Tlatoani. They carry royal goods to distant markets and return with treasures the empire cannot produce. Quetzal feathers from the Maya lowlands, jade from Guatemala, jaguar pelts from the tropical forests, cacao beans from Soconusco, turquoise from the northern deserts, gold dust from Oaxaca. These luxury goods fuel the prestige economy that binds nobles to the throne. A merchant's journey begins with ritual. Before departure, the Pochteca gather at night, washing their traveling staves in sacred water, making offerings to Itzcoatl, the lord of the vanguard, their patron god. They leave the city in darkness, slipping away without fanfare. Ostentation invites robbery. Discretion ensures survival. The trade routes stretch thousands of kilometers. Caravans of porters called tlamim carry loads of 60 pounds across mountain passes and through jungle trails. There are no wheeled vehicles, no pack animals. Human muscle moves every bundle. A journey to the Maya coast might take months. The Pochteca establish way stations, cultivate local contacts, learn foreign languages. They become experts in geography, diplomacy, and survival. But the Pochteca serve purposes beyond commerce. They are the eyes and ears of empire. When entering territories not yet conquered, merchants observe fortifications, count warriors, assess wealth. They note which cities might resist, which rulers might be bribed, which populations might welcome liberation from local tyrants. This intelligence flows back to Tenochtitlan, informing military strategy. Sometimes the Pochteca provoke the wars they scout. Arriving in a hostile city, they might be attacked, their goods stolen, their companions killed. Such outrages demand imperial response. Armies march to avenge merchant blood, and new provinces join the tribute rolls. Whether these provocations are deliberate remains a matter of interpretation. The empire benefits either way. The wealth of successful Pochteca creates social tension. Merchants accumulate riches that rival noble fortunes, yet they occupy an ambiguous position in the hierarchy. They are commoners by birth, but plutocrats by achievement. To avoid aristocratic jealousy, the Pochteca practice elaborate humility. They enter the city at night, hide their treasures, dress modestly, speak softly of their journeys. They convert wealth into prestige through lavish feasts that redistribute their gains. The great merchants sponsor ceremonies, sacrifice slaves they have purchased in distant markets, feed entire neighborhoods. These displays transform commercial success into social capital. The most accomplished Pochteca receive noble privileges, the right to wear certain garments, to drink cacao at royal feasts, to sit in honored positions. Their sons might marry into noble families. In Tlatelolco, the merchant guild maintains its own judicial system. Disputes over contracts, debts, and trade violations are settled in merchant courts. The Pochteca police their own ranks, punishing those who cheat or bring dishonor to the guild. This autonomy reflects their indispensable value to the state. The network they maintain connects Tenochtitlan to worlds beyond Aztec control. Through the Pochteca, the empire touches civilizations it will never conquer. Maya cities trade with Aztec merchants, even as they resist Aztec armies. The commerce continues regardless of political boundaries. Goods flow where soldiers cannot march. By the late 15th century, the Pochteca have become essential infrastructure of imperial power. They supply the luxury goods that maintain noble hierarchies. They gather intelligence that guides conquest. They extend Aztec influence into regions beyond military reach. The empire depends on warriors for terror and tribute. It depends on merchants for everything else. The market awakens before dawn. In the darkness, torches flicker across the great plaza of Tlatelolco, the sister city that shares the island with Tenochtitlan. Porters arrive first, bent under burdens of maize and beans, their bare feet slapping against stone worn smooth by generations of commerce. By the time the sun crests the eastern mountains, 60,000 souls will fill this space, transforming it into the greatest marketplace the Americas have ever known. Tlatelolco's market operates on a scale that staggers comprehension. The plaza stretches across an area larger than any European marketplace of the era. Spanish conquistadors who later witness it will compare it favorably to the markets of Constantinople and Rome. Every 5 days, the great market convenes in full force, though smaller daily trading never ceases. The rhythm of commerce beats as steadily as the empire's heart. The organization reveals sophisticated urban planning. The market divides into specialized sections, each commodity confined to its designated area. Vendors selling identical goods cluster together, allowing buyers to compare quality and negotiate prices. Pottery occupies one quarter, textiles another. Goldsmiths work near featherworkers. Herbalists arrange their remedies beside physicians who set bones and treat wounds. The logic prevents chaos, channels the human river into navigable streams. Cacao beans serve as currency, small enough for daily purchases, valuable enough for significant transactions. A rabbit costs 30 beans. A turkey egg costs 3. A slave might cost 100 lengths of cotton cloth, itself measured against cacao equivalents. Larger transactions employ standardized cotton cloaks called cuachtli, each worth a fixed quantity of cacao. The system allows commerce without coined money, sophisticated exchange without minted metal. The goods themselves reveal the empire's reach. Obsidian blades arrive from highland quarries. Salt comes from lakeside evaporation ponds. Rubber balls bounce in from the tropical lowlands. Jade and turquoise travel hundreds of kilometers. Jaguar pelts, quetzal feathers, cacao, vanilla, and copal incense flow from distant provinces. The market becomes a mirror reflecting the tribute network's vast geography. Food dominates the daily trade. Maize in every form fills countless stalls. Tortillas stack in warm piles. Tamales wrapped in corn husks steam in clay pots. Vendors sell atole, the thick maize drink, alongside chocolate frothed with wooden whisks. Chili peppers in dozens of varieties add fire to every meal. Tomatoes, squash, avocados, and beans complete the dietary foundation. Fish from the lake, venison from the forests, turkey and dog meat for those who can afford flesh. Market judges maintain order with absolute authority. These officials patrol the aisles, settling disputes, verifying measures, punishing fraud. Standardized measuring devices ensure honest transactions. Vendors who cheat face immediate justice, their goods confiscated, their reputations destroyed. The market's integrity depends on trust, and trust requires enforcement. Craftspeople sell finished goods alongside raw materials. Weavers display cotton cloth in grades from coarse to impossibly fine. Potters arrange vessels painted with geometric precision. Lapidaries offer polished jade and obsidian mirrors. Sandal makers, mat weavers, basket makers, rope twisters, paper producers, and countless other specialists transform raw tribute into finished commodities. The market serves functions beyond commerce. Information flows as freely as goods. Gossip travels from stall to stall. News of distant provinces reaches the capital through merchant networks. Political alliances form over negotiations. Social hierarchies display themselves through purchasing power. The market becomes theatre where the empire performs its abundance. By afternoon, the plaza hums with accumulated energy, 60,000 voices bargaining, laughing, arguing, greeting. The smell of cooked food mingles with incense and flowers. Colors blur together in endless variety. The market represents everything the empire has achieved, concentrated into a single overwhelming space where commerce transforms tribute into civilization. Beyond the temples and palaces, beyond the merchants and warriors, the empire rests upon millions of ordinary lives. The Mesoamerican, the commoners who form the vast majority of Aztec society, wake each morning to routines unchanged across generations. Their labor sustains everything above them. A typical household rises before dawn. The cooking fire, carefully banked overnight, flickers back to life. Women grind maize on stone metates, the rhythmic scraping echoing through adobe walls. This grinding consumes hours daily, transforming dried kernels into the mesa that becomes tortillas, tamales, and atole porridge. The sound defines domestic life as surely as temple drums define the sacred precinct. The family dwelling reflects social position. Commoners live in single-room structures of adobe brick or wattle and daub, floors of packed earth, roofs of thatch or maguey leaves. Sleeping mats roll against walls during daylight. A few ceramic vessels, grinding stones, and woven baskets constitute household wealth. Nobility enjoy multi-room compounds with plastered walls, raised sleeping platforms, and separate spaces for cooking, storage, and reception. Children enter education around age 15. The Tenochtitlan, the House of Youth, receives commoner boys for military training and civic instruction. They learn weapon handling, agricultural techniques, construction labor, and the songs that preserve history. Discipline proves harsh. Cold baths before dawn, limited food, physical punishment for infractions. The Karmakak, reserved primarily for noble children, offers more intensive education in priesthood, governance, calendar calculations, and the interpretation of sacred texts. Girls receive education at home. Mothers teach weaving, cooking, child-rearing, and the countless skills domestic management requires. Some girls enter temple service, learning ritual duties and textile production. Marriage typically occurs between ages 15 and 18, arranged by families with professional matchmakers facilitating negotiations. Artisans occupy a distinctive social position. Featherworkers, goldsmiths, lapidaries, and other specialists live in designated neighborhoods, their crafts passing through family lines. The Amantaka, the featherworkers, enjoy particular prestige. Their workshops transform quetzal plumes, hummingbird feathers, and countless other specimens into cloaks, headdresses, and shields of astonishing beauty. They worship their own patron deity, maintain their own festivals, and answer directly to the palace rather than local authorities. Slavery exists but differs from European conceptions. The Tlacotin become slaves through debt, criminal punishment, or voluntary sale during famine. They retain legal rights, can own property, marry free persons, and purchase their freedom. Their children are born free. Slaves serve households, work agricultural lands, or await sacrifice. The institution provides social flexibility, allowing the desperate to survive while providing labor for those who can afford it. Agricultural rhythms govern most lives. The majority of commoners work land belonging to their kalpuli, the neighborhood kinship units that organize society below the state level. Each Kalpulli holds territory collectively, distributing plots to member families. Farmers owe tribute in goods and labor, contributing to both local temples and imperial demands. The chinampas surrounding Tenochtitlan require constant maintenance, their fertility sustained through canal dredging and organic fertilization. Food defines daily existence. Maize in every form provides the foundation. Beans supply protein. Squash, tomatoes, chilies, and amaranth add variety. Maguey cactus yields fibers for cloth, thorns for needles, and fermented pulp for ritual and recreation. Commoners rarely eat meat, reserving turkey, dog, and wild game for festivals. Chocolate remains a luxury, cacao beans serving as currency too valuable for ordinary consumption. Clothing marks status instantly. Commoners wear simple maguey fiber garments, rough and undyed. Cotton remains restricted by law to nobility and successful warriors. The length of cloaks, the complexity of designs, the presence of feathers or precious stones all communicate rank. Sumptuary laws enforce these distinctions, punishing commoners who dress above their station. The Kalpulli provides identity, security, and obligation. It assigns land, organizes labor drafts, maintains local temples, settles disputes, and represents members before higher authorities. Each Kalpulli elects leaders, maintains schools, and preserves traditions specific to its community. The system balances individual households against collective responsibilities, creating social cohesion beneath imperial structures. Life expectancy remains uncertain. Disease, childbirth complications, warfare, and accident claim many before old age. Those who survive into their 50s and 60s gain respect as repositories of knowledge. The elderly advise families, perform ritual functions, and enjoy exemptions from tribute obligations. Death comes with elaborate preparation. Bodies are wrapped, accompanied by goods for the journey ahead. Cremation predominates, ashes interred beneath household floors or in community burial grounds. The destination of souls depends not on moral conduct, but on manner of death. Warriors fallen in battle and women dying in childbirth ascend to accompany the sun. Yet the empire creates more than conquest. In workshops scattered across Tenochtitlan and provincial capitals, artisans transform raw materials into objects of breathtaking beauty, works that serve gods, glorify rulers, and encode the cosmos itself in feather, gold, and stone. The Amantaka, the feather workers, occupy an honored position among craftsmen. Their guild traces origins to Toltec masters, and they maintain exclusive neighborhoods where techniques pass through generations. The raw materials arrive through tribute and trade. Quetzal plumes from the distant Maya highlands, scarlet macaw feathers from tropical lowlands, hummingbird iridescence gathered by specialized hunters. Cotinga blue and Trogon green from forests the Mexica have never seen. The process demands years of training. Apprentices learn to sort feathers by color, size, and quality. Master craftsmen sketch designs on bark paper, then build layers upon frameworks of cotton and agave fiber. Feathers attach through careful knotting and adhesive made from orchid bulbs. The most precious works require thousands of individual plumes, each positioned to catch light at precise angles. Moctezuma's ceremonial headdress represents the pinnacle of this art. Over 400 Quetzal tail feathers cascade in emerald waves, interspersed with blue cotinga, pink flamingo, and golden oriole. Gold ornaments punctuate the design. Such objects possess spiritual power beyond mere decoration. They transform rulers into living embodiments of Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent whose worship predates the Mexica by centuries. Gold workers employ techniques inherited from distant southern cultures. The lost wax method allows intricate casting. Beeswax models receive clay coatings, then molten gold replaces the melted wax. Artisans create lip plugs, ear spools, nose ornaments, and pectorals depicting eagles, serpents, and solar discs. Gold arrives as tribute from Oaxacan provinces, where Mixtec craftsmen have perfected metalworking for generations. The Mexica value gold not for currency, but for its solar associations, calling it the excrement of the sun. Turquoise mosaic work achieves similar sophistication. Tiny stone fragments, sometimes thousands per object, cover wooden or bone substrates. Masks depicting Quetzalcoatl or Tezcatlipoca stare with shell eyes and obsidian pupils. Sacrificial knives receive handles encrusted with turquoise, coral, and malachite. The materials themselves carry meaning. Turquoise connects to fire and nobility, obsidian to night and sacrifice. Stone carvers work volcanic basalt and andesite into monuments of cosmic significance. The great calendar stone, weighing over 20 tons, depicts the face of Tonatiuh, the sun god, surrounded by symbols encoding the 4 previous world ages and the current 5th sun. Carved during the reign of Itzcoatl, it serves as both astronomical instrument and theological statement. The universe itself appears frozen in stone. Colossal sculptures of Coatlicue, the earth goddess, combine human and serpentine elements into forms that terrify and awe. Her skirt writhes with snakes, her necklace displays severed hands and hearts, her face consists of 2 serpent heads meeting. Such works embody the Mexica understanding that creation and destruction remain inseparable, that beauty and terror coexist in divine reality. Ceramic traditions continue patterns established over millennia. Polychrome vessels depict gods, warriors, and ritual scenes. Incense burners take elaborate forms. Everyday pottery serves practical functions while maintaining aesthetic standards. Even utilitarian objects receive careful attention. Codex painters preserve knowledge in folded books of deerskin or bark paper. Pictographic writing records tribute lists, historical narratives, ritual calendars, and genealogies. Scribes train for years to master the conventions. Each symbol carries precise meaning within established visual vocabularies. These artistic traditions serve imperial purposes. Tribute demands specify not merely raw materials, but finished luxury goods. Provincial workshops produce for Tenochtitlan's appetite. Art objects cement alliances, reward loyalty, and display power. Yet they also preserve cosmological knowledge, encode historical memory, and create beauty that transcends political function. The empire builds itself in feather and gold as surely as in blood and stone. The empire reaches for its greatest heights. In 1486, a new Tlatoani ascends the reed-mat throne, and the Aztec world will never be the same. Itzcoatl, whose name means water beast, brings a ferocity to conquest that surpasses all predecessors. Where his brother Tizoc faltered in military campaigns, earning whispered contempt, Itzcoatl burns with ambition that will stretch imperial borders to their ultimate extent. The young emperor wastes no time. Within months of his coronation, armies march against rebellious provinces that had tested Tizoc's weakness. Itzcoatl leads from the front, unusual for a Tlatoani, his presence on battlefields inspiring terror among enemies and devotion among warriors. The reconquest proves swift and brutal. Tribute that had slowed to a trickle flows again toward Tenochtitlan in rivers of cotton, cacao, jade, and gold. But Ahuitzotl's vision extends far beyond reconquest. His armies push southward into Oaxacan highlands, overwhelming Zapotec and Mixtec kingdoms that had maintained independence for generations. The campaigns require years of sustained warfare, supply lines stretching across mountain ranges, garrisons established in hostile territory. Provincial capitals fall one by one. Tribute lists expand to include new luxury goods, new populations, new sacrificial victims. The Pacific coast beckons. Aztec armies descend from highland plateaus toward tropical lowlands, conquering the wealthy cacao-producing regions of Soconusco along the southern coast. These distant provinces provide goods unavailable in the central highlands. Cacao beans become currency and luxury beverage. Tropical feathers in brilliant colors flow northward for imperial workshops. The empire's reach now spans from the Gulf of Mexico to the Pacific Ocean. In 1487, Ahuitzotl orchestrates the greatest spectacle the Aztec world has ever witnessed. The Templo Mayor, expanded to unprecedented scale, requires dedication worthy of its magnificence. For 4 days, sacrificial victims climb the twin staircases. Priests work in shifts, obsidian blades rising and falling without pause. Hearts accumulate in stone vessels. Blood cascades down pyramid steps in sheets. Later accounts, perhaps exaggerated, claim 80,000 victims perish during the dedication ceremonies. Even conservative estimates suggest thousands die over those 4 days. Conquered peoples provide most victims, their capture in flower wars and military campaigns serving this ultimate purpose. The message radiates outward to every corner of the empire and beyond. Aztec power operates on a scale that defies comprehension. The Templo Mayor now dominates Tenochtitlan's sacred precinct with overwhelming presence. Twin shrines to Huitzilopochtli and Tlaloc crown the massive pyramid, visible from every corner of the island city and from shores across Lake Texcoco. Stone serpent heads guard the base, elaborate carvings cover every surface. The structure embodies imperial theology made manifest in volcanic stone. Ahuitzotl's conquests continue relentlessly. Northern campaigns push into Huastec territories along the Gulf Coast. Eastern expeditions probe toward Maya lands. The empire absorbs dozens of new provinces, each adding tribute obligations, each providing warriors for future campaigns. Military success breeds further success as conquered peoples join Aztec armies against their own neighbors. Yet expansion creates new challenges. Supply lines stretch thin across difficult terrain. Distant garrisons require constant reinforcement. Conquered peoples resist tribute demands, requiring repeated military interventions. The empire's administrative capacity strains under the weight of its own success. Ahuitzotl responds with organizational reforms, strengthening provincial governance, establishing new tribute collection systems. The Tlatoani also transforms Tenochtitlan itself. A new aqueduct from Coyoacan brings fresh water to the growing capital. The project demonstrates both engineering ambition and imperial resources. When initial construction causes flooding, Ahuitzotl personally oversees repairs, reportedly injuring himself in the process. The completed aqueduct serves a city now approaching 200,000 inhabitants. By 1502, when Ahuitzotl dies from complications of his head injury, the empire encompasses nearly 500 tributary provinces. Tribute flows in quantities that stagger imagination. the Aztec realm stands at its absolute territorial zenith, a dominion unmatched in Mesoamerican history. Yet the very scale of conquest has created enemies beyond counting, resentments that simmer beneath the surface of imperial control. The empire cannot conquer everything. Even as Itzcoatl's armies push the frontiers to their furthest extent, one enemy remains stubbornly unconquered. Tlaxcala sits barely 60 miles east of Tenochtitlan, a confederation of 4 allied states that defies every attempt at subjugation. The Aztec war machine, which has crushed hundreds of cities and provinces, breaks against these mountain valleys like waves against volcanic stone. The Tlaxcalans share language, gods, and cultural heritage with their Aztec enemies. They worship the same feathered serpent, observe the same calendar, practice the same rituals. Yet political independence matters more than cultural kinship. 4 ruling houses govern the confederation through council rather than single monarchy. This collective leadership proves remarkably resilient, preventing the internal divisions that Aztec diplomacy typically exploits. Geography favors the defenders. Tlaxcala occupies highland valleys ringed by mountains, with limited approaches that funnel invading armies into killing grounds. Fortifications guard the passes, stone walls, and ditches that slow any advance. The Tlaxcalans have studied Aztec tactics for generations, developing countermeasures that neutralize numerical superiority. Their warriors match the eagle and jaguar knights in skill and ferocity. The flower wars institutionalize this perpetual conflict. These ritualized battles serve multiple purposes beyond simple combat. They provide captives for sacrifice without the expense of distant campaigns. They train warriors in actual combat conditions. They maintain military readiness during periods between major conquests. Yet the flower wars also preserve Tlaxcalan independence, giving them regular practice against Aztec methods. Aztec sources later claim the flower wars deliberately spare Tlaxcala as a convenient source of sacrificial victims. This explanation serves imperial pride, transforming failure into strategic choice. The reality proves less flattering. Multiple full-scale invasions fail to break Tlaxcalan resistance. The Confederation endures siege, economic blockade, and sustained military pressure without submission. The blockade tightens over decades. Aztec conquests gradually encircle Tlaxcala, cutting trade routes and denying access to essential goods. Salt becomes precious, cotton unavailable, cacao a distant memory. The Tlaxcalans adapt, developing substitutes and alternative networks. Their warriors wear maguey fiber instead of cotton armor. Their priests perform rituals without the luxury goods that flow freely into Tenochtitlan. This deprivation breeds hatred that transcends ordinary political rivalry. Tlaxcalan children grow up knowing the taste of sacrifice, understanding that Aztec victory means their hearts torn from living chests. Each generation inherits grievances sharpened by blockade and battle. The enmity becomes existential, woven into Tlaxcalan identity itself. Other unconquered peoples watch and learn. The Tarascans to the west maintain their independence through superior metallurgy and military organization. The Yopotzinco in the southern mountains resist repeated invasions. Certain Maya kingdoms remain beyond effective Aztec reach. These failures reveal the empire's limits, demonstrating that resistance remains possible despite overwhelming Aztec power. The tributary system itself generates perpetual instability. Conquered provinces pay tribute, but receive little beyond the absence of further violence. Local rulers maintain power only through collaboration, making them targets of popular resentment. Rebellions flare regularly, requiring constant military attention. The empire expands outward while struggling to digest what it has already swallowed. Tenochtitlan's priests interpret these failures through cosmic frameworks. Perhaps the gods require perpetual warfare rather than total victory. Perhaps the flower wars serve divine purposes beyond human understanding. These theological explanations comfort imperial pride while masking strategic limitations. Yet the unconquered frontier represents more than military failure. Tlaxcala embodies an alternative possibility, proof that Aztec domination is not inevitable destiny. When strangers eventually arrive from the Eastern Sea, they will find ready allies among those who have spent generations preparing for exactly this moment of Aztec vulnerability. The throne passes to new hands in 1502. Moctezuma I, the Younger, ascends to power not through battlefield glory alone, but through priestly training and philosophical contemplation. Unlike his predecessor Itzcoatl, whose reign dripped with conquest and sacrifice, this new Tlatoani brings different qualities to imperial rule. He has served in the temples, studied the sacred calendars, observed the movements of stars across the obsidian night sky. The new emperor immediately transforms court protocol. Where previous rulers maintained accessibility to nobles and warriors, Moctezuma II institutes elaborate ceremonies of distance and reverence. Courtiers must approach barefoot, eyes downcast, wearing rough maguey fiber rather than fine cotton. None may look directly upon the divine ruler. He eats alone behind screens, his meals prepared by hundreds of servants who present dozens of dishes from which he selects in solitary contemplation. The palace complex expands under his direction. Gardens filled with exotic plants from every conquered province create living tribute to imperial reach. Aviaries house birds of brilliant plumage, their feathers destined for ceremonial garments. A private zoo contains jaguars, pumas, eagles, and serpents, living symbols of warrior orders and cosmic forces. Rooms dedicated to astronomical observation allow priests to track celestial movements with obsessive precision. Moctezuma consolidates rather than expands. His armies campaign, certainly, pushing against familiar enemies, extracting tribute from restless provinces. But the frantic territorial growth of Ahuitzotl's reign gives way to administrative refinement. Tribute records multiply in complexity. Provincial governors receive closer supervision. The bureaucracy of empire grows more sophisticated, more demanding, more intrusive. Religious reforms reshape spiritual practice. The emperor elevates certain deities, adjusts ritual calendars, interprets omens with personal authority. His priestly training grants him legitimacy in theological matters that previous warrior emperors lacked. He consults constantly with astronomers, with keepers of sacred books, with interpreters of dreams and portents. The omens begin appearing around 1510. A column of fire blazes across the night sky, visible for a full year according to later accounts. The temple of Huitzilopochtli catches fire spontaneously, flames that water cannot extinguish. Lightning strikes another temple on a cloudless day. A comet streaks across the heavens. Lake Texcoco boils without heat, flooding parts of the city. Hunters capture a strange bird with a mirror in its head, and when Moctezuma gazes into it, he sees armed strangers approaching. Whether these omens occurred as later sources describe, or whether memory reconstructed them after catastrophe struck, they capture something essential about this final decade of independent Aztec rule. The empire has reached its natural limits. The unconquered Tlaxcalans remain defiant. Distant provinces rebel with increasing frequency. The machinery of tribute extraction strains against its own complexity. Moctezuma responds to uncertainty with intensified ritual, more sacrifices, more consultations with priests, more elaborate ceremonies designed to maintain cosmic balance. The fifth sun requires constant nourishment, and the emperor feels the weight of sustaining the entire universe upon his shoulders. Reports begin arriving from the eastern coasts. Strange floating temples have appeared on the sea. Bearded men with skin like limestone have come ashore. They carry thunder sticks and ride enormous deer-like creatures. The year approaches one reed, the prophesied return date of the feathered serpent Quetzalcoatl. The floating temples materialize from morning mist. In 1517, a Spanish expedition under Francisco Hernández de Córdoba sails westward from Cuba, seeking slaves and gold. What they discover instead transforms everything. The Yucatan coast reveals stone cities, cotton-clad populations, sophisticated agriculture. These are not the simple islanders the Spanish have encountered before. These are heirs to millennia of civilization. The expedition ends badly. Maya warriors at Champoton inflict devastating casualties. Córdoba himself dies from his wounds shortly after returning to Cuba. But the reports he carries back ignite Spanish imagination. Gold ornaments, elaborate temples, organized kingdoms. Somewhere beyond that hostile coast lies wealth beyond imagining. Governor Diego Velázquez dispatches a second expedition in 1518 under Juan de Grijalva. 4 ships probe further along the Gulf Coast, trading glass beads and Spanish cloth for gold objects that grow increasingly elaborate as they sail westward. Native messengers paddle out in canoes, offering gifts, asking questions. Word travels inland with remarkable speed. Runners carry painted reports toward the highland capital, where Moctezuma receives each detail with growing unease. The strangers possess thunder weapons that kill from impossible distances. They wear metal shells that deflect obsidian blades. They ride enormous creatures that combine the speed of deer with the strength of jaguars. Their floating temples move against the wind itself. Nothing in Aztec experience or mythology quite explains these beings. Grijalva returns to Cuba with gold worth 20,000 pesos and stories of a great empire somewhere inland. The governor immediately organizes a third expedition, larger and better equipped. Command falls to Hernán Cortés, a minor nobleman burning with ambition and debt. In February 1519, 11 ships carrying approximately 550 soldiers, 16 horses, and 14 cannons depart Cuban shores. The fleet follows the coast, landing first at Cozumel, where Cortés recovers a shipwrecked Spaniard named Jerónimo de Aguilar, who has learned Maya languages during 8 years of captivity. At the Tabasco River, fierce resistance gives way to submission after cavalry charges terrify warriors who have never seen horses. Among the tribute gifts presented to the victors stands a young woman named Malintzin, fluent in both Maya and Nahuatl. This woman becomes the crucial link. Cortés speaks Spanish to Aguilar, who translates to Maya for Malintzin, who renders everything into Nahuatl for Aztec ambassadors. Through this chain, 2 worlds begin their fateful conversation. The Spanish establish a beachhead at a place they name Villa Rica de la Vera Cruz. Moctezuma's ambassadors arrive bearing extraordinary gifts: massive gold discs representing the sun and moon, elaborate feather work, jade ornaments, obsidian mirrors. The emperor hopes these treasures will satisfy the strangers and encourage their departure. The strategy backfires catastrophically. Spanish eyes widen at gold that confirms every rumor of inland wealth. Cortés sends the treasure to Spain, bypassing Governor Velázquez entirely. He burns his ships to prevent retreat. His small army now has only one direction to march. At Chempoala, the Spanish encounter their first willing allies. The Totonac people chafe under Aztec tribute demands. They describe the Highland Empire in detail, its wealth, its power, its many enemies. Cortés listens carefully. The path to Tenochtitlan will not require Spanish strength alone. Moctezuma's messengers continue arriving, bearing more gifts, more warnings, more requests that the strangers turn back. Each embassy reveals more about Aztec uncertainty. The emperor cannot decide whether these beings are gods, men, or something unprecedented. The calendar year 1 read adds cosmic weight to the encounter. Ancient prophecies speak of Quetzalcoatl's return from the eastern sea. The strangers begin their march inland toward the mountains. The mountains rise like a wall between worlds. In August of 1519, the Spanish column begins its ascent from the tropical lowlands into the volcanic highlands, climbing through pine forests where the air grows thin and cold. 400 Spanish soldiers, 15 horses, several cannons, and thousands of Totonac porters and warriors wind along ancient trade routes that have connected coast to highland for centuries. The path leads toward Tenochtitlan, but first it must pass through the territory of the Aztec Empire's most implacable enemies. Tlaxcala stands unconquered. For nearly a century, this confederation of 4 Altepetl has resisted Aztec domination, fighting flower wars, enduring economic blockades, surviving without salt or cotton from the lowlands. The Tlaxcalans have every reason to hate the Triple Alliance. They have no reason to trust these strange newcomers. The first encounters prove violent. Tlaxcalan warriors attack the Spanish column repeatedly over 2 weeks of brutal fighting. Obsidian-edged swords clash against Toledo steel. Arrows darken the sky. The Spanish horses terrify indigenous fighters who have never seen such creatures. But Tlaxcalan courage does not break easily. Thousands of warriors press the assault, testing these strangers who claim to oppose the Aztec emperor. The Spanish survive through superior armor, cavalry charges, and cannon fire, but they cannot advance against such numbers. Cortés sends peace embassies. The Tlaxcalan Council debates fiercely. Some leaders argue for continued war until these invaders are destroyed. Others see opportunity in alliance against the ancient Aztec enemy. Pragmatism prevails. In September, the Tlaxcalans welcome the Spanish into their capital. The transformation proves remarkable. Former enemies become devoted allies. Tlaxcalan lords provide food, shelter, intelligence about Aztec military strength, and thousands of warriors eager to march against Tenochtitlan. The Spanish force multiplies overnight from hundreds to tens of thousands. Moctezuma watches these developments with growing alarm. His messengers continue arriving at the Spanish camp, bearing gifts of gold and jade, urging the strangers to turn back, offering tribute if they will simply leave. Each embassy reveals Aztec anxiety. The emperor's sorcerers have failed to stop the advance through magic. His armies have not intercepted the column. Now his greatest enemies have joined forces with these unprecedented beings. The road leads next to Cholula, a sacred city of temples and pilgrimage, nominally allied with Tenochtitlan. The Spanish and their Tlaxcalan allies enter peacefully, but tensions simmer beneath formal hospitality. Cortés receives warnings of an ambush being prepared. Whether the threat is real or manufactured, the Spanish response proves devastating. In October, the massacre at Cholula unfolds with terrible efficiency. Spanish soldiers and Tlaxcalan warriors fall upon the city's nobles and warriors gathered in the main plaza. Thousands die within hours. Temples burn. The sacred city that has stood for centuries as a pilgrimage center becomes a charnel house. News of the slaughter spreads across the highlands like wildfire. The message reaches Tenochtitlan before the Spanish do. These strangers will not be turned aside by gifts or diplomacy. They kill without the ritual restraint of flower wars. They ally with enemies and destroy sacred places. They march steadily closer to the heart of the empire. The column resumes its advance through the mountain passes between the great volcanoes. Snow-capped Popocatépetl and Itzcoatl frame the path forward. The Spanish soldiers, many from the mild climates of Cuba and Extremadura, suffer in the freezing altitude. Yet they press onward, driven by tales of gold and glory. In early November, the column crests the final ridge and gazes down upon the Valley of Mexico for the first time. The lake system spreads below like a mirror reflecting the sky. Cities dot the shoreline and islands. Causeways stretch across the water like white ribbons. And there, at the center, rising from the lake itself, stands Tenochtitlan. The Spanish soldiers fall silent before the sight. Nothing in their experience has prepared them for this vision. The island city gleams in the highland sunlight, its temples and palaces and markets spread across an urban landscape larger than any city in Spain. The capital of the empire they have come to conquer awaits their arrival. The causeway stretches before them like a path into legend. On November 8, 1519, the Spanish column advances along the southern causeway from Iztapalapa toward the island city. Thousands of canoes crowd the waters on either side, filled with curious observers watching these strange visitors approach. The causeway itself teems with people, nobility and commoners alike, pressing forward to glimpse the bearded strangers and their enormous deer-like beasts. At the causeway's midpoint, a procession emerges from the city. Moctezuma I approaches beneath a canopy of green quetzal feathers, carried on a litter of gold and precious stones. Nobles sweep the ground before him, laying down cotton mantles so his sandaled feet need never touch bare earth. The Tlatoani of the Aztec world meets the captain from Extremadura. What passes between them remains contested by history. The Spanish will later claim Moctezuma surrendered his empire in that moment, acknowledging Cortés as representative of a returning god. The truth likely proves far more complex. Moctezuma extends hospitality to potentially dangerous visitors, following diplomatic protocols while assessing their intentions and capabilities. The Spanish take residence in the palace of Itzcoatl, Moctezuma's father, a vast complex near the sacred precinct. They marvel at the luxury surrounding them, the cotton bedding and featherwork tapestries and gold ornaments. Yet they remain guests in a city of 200,000, surrounded by warriors who could overwhelm them in hours. The tension never dissipates. Within days, Cortés makes his boldest move. Learning of a skirmish on the coast where Aztec tributaries killed several Spaniards, he demands Moctezuma accompany him to the Spanish quarters. The emperor, perhaps calculating that cooperation preserves more options than resistance, agrees. He becomes a prisoner in his own capital, though the fiction of voluntary residence persists. For months this strange arrangement continues. Moctezuma issues orders through Spanish intermediaries. Tribute flows to Tenochtitlan as before. The empire's administration functions while its ruler remains confined. Spanish soldiers explore the city, mapping its causeways and markets and temples. They discover the treasury of Itzcoatl, gold accumulated over generations, and their eyes gleam with avarice. Spring brings crisis from an unexpected direction. Governor Velázquez of Cuba, furious that Cortés exceeded his authority, dispatches Pánfilo de Narváez with 900 men to arrest the renegade captain. Cortés leaves Tenochtitlan in May of 1520, taking most of his forces to confront this new threat. He leaves Pedro de Alvarado in command with fewer than 150 Spaniards. Alvarado watches the preparations for Tenochtitlan, the great festival honoring Tezcatlipoca. Thousands of Aztec nobles gather in the sacred precinct, adorned in their finest regalia, dancing the ancient ceremonies. Alvarado sees warriors in feathered splendor and perceives conspiracy. On May 20th, he orders the precinct gates sealed. The massacre unfolds with terrible efficiency. Spanish soldiers fall upon the unarmed dancers with swords and crossbows. The sacred precinct becomes a slaughterhouse. Hundreds of the empire's highest nobility die within hours, their blood pooling on stones that have witnessed countless sacrifices. But this blood demands different vengeance. Tenochtitlan erupts. The population that tolerated Spanish presence now rises in fury. Warriors besiege the palace of Itzcoatl, cutting off food and water. Moctezuma appears on the rooftop, attempting to calm his people, and stones rain down upon him. Within days, the emperor lies dead. Whether from those stones or Spanish blades remains disputed. Cortés returns from defeating Narváez, bringing reinforcements but finding disaster. The city has become a death trap. On June 30th, the Spanish attempt escape under cover of darkness. They load gold onto horses and soldiers, too much gold, and begin crossing the Tlacopan causeway westward. The night explodes with war cries. Canoes swarm the causeway gaps. Warriors attack from all directions. Horses plunge into the lake, dragged down by their golden burdens. Soldiers drown under the weight of treasure they refuse to release. The causeway becomes a killing ground stretching across black water. Those who survive will call it La Noche Triste, the night of sorrows. Perhaps 600 Spaniards die, along with thousands of Tlaxcalan allies. The survivors stagger toward Tlaxcala, wounded and broken, their dreams of easy conquest shattered. Behind them, Tenochtitlan celebrates liberation, not knowing that worse horrors approach with the invisible enemy the Spanish have already introduced. The invisible enemy arrives before the Spanish return. Smallpox spreads through Tenochtitlan in the autumn of 1520, carried by an infected African slave among the Narváez expedition. The disease moves through the dense island city with terrifying efficiency, passing from house to house along the canals, spreading through the markets, penetrating the sacred precinct itself. The Mexica have no immunity, no understanding, no defense. Within weeks, the pustules cover bodies from face to feet. The sick cannot rise to fetch water. The healthy cannot tend the dying without becoming infected themselves. Entire families perish together in their homes, their bodies undiscovered for days. The canals that once carried commerce now carry corpses towards the lake. Cuitlahuac, the emperor who led the uprising against the Spanish, falls to the disease after ruling only 80 days. The throne passes to Cuauhtémoc, nephew of Moctezuma, a young warrior of perhaps 25 years who inherits a city already dying. He orders the dead buried, the streets cleaned, the temples purified. He prepares for war even as his people succumb by the thousands. The Spanish spend these months rebuilding. Cortés retreats to Tlaxcala, where his indigenous allies remain loyal despite the disaster. He requests reinforcements from Cuba, receives ships, men, horses, and gunpowder. Most crucially, he orders the construction of 13 brigantines, small warships that can be carried overland in pieces and assembled on the lake. He understands that Tenochtitlan's strength lies in its island position, and that strength must be neutralized. By late December of 1520, the Spanish column marches again toward the Valley of Mexico. This time, they number over 500 Spaniards and perhaps 40,000 indigenous allies, warriors from Tlaxcala, Texcoco, and other cities that have chosen the newcomers over their Aztec overlords. They carry the disassembled brigantines on the backs of 8,000 porters. The siege begins in May of 1521. Spanish forces occupy the 3 causeways connecting Tenochtitlan to the mainland, cutting the city's access to fresh food and water. The brigantines launch onto Lake Texcoco, their cannons and crossbows sweeping away the war canoes that once dominated these waters. The aqueduct from Chapultepec falls to Spanish axes, ending the flow of fresh water into the city. Cuauhtémoc refuses surrender. His warriors fight from rooftops and canal bridges, using the urban terrain to neutralize Spanish cavalry. They dig pits in the streets to trap horses. They collapse buildings onto advancing columns. They launch nighttime canoe raids against the brigantines. Every block becomes a fortress, every canal a defensive line. The Spanish advance by destruction. Each day they push forward, filling canals with rubble, demolishing buildings to prevent ambush. Each night the Mexica counterattack, sometimes recovering lost ground. The siege becomes a war of attrition, measured in streets rather than battles, in starvation rather than steel. Inside the city, the population eats bark, leather, insects, anything that might sustain life. The dead lie unburied in the streets, too numerous to move. Disease continues its harvest alongside hunger. Yet the warriors fight on, their resistance sustained by faith, by pride, by the knowledge that surrender means the death of everything their ancestors built. 80 days of siege reduce the greatest city in the Americas to rubble and corpses. The chinampas rot untended. The temples stand silent, their priests dead or scattered. The markets where 60,000 once traded lie empty beneath the summer sun. Still, Cuauhtémoc holds the northern district of Tlatelolco, the last unconquered ground of an empire that once stretched from sea to sea. The final dawn breaks grey over Tlatelolco. August 13th, 1521. Smoke rises from 1,000 fires across the ruined city, mixing with morning mist above the lake. The Spanish brigantines close their cordon around the last unconquered district, their cannons loaded, their crews exhausted but sensing the end. On the shattered causeways, tens of thousands of allied warriors from Tlaxcala, Texcoco, and a dozen other cities mass for the final assault. They have waited generations for this day. Cuauhtémoc surveys his remaining forces from the marketplace of Tlatelolco. Perhaps 15,000 warriors still capable of fighting, armed with broken weapons, weakened by months of starvation. The women and children huddle in the ruins of temples, their faces hollow, their eyes holding the knowledge of what approaches. The young emperor has rejected every offer of surrender, knowing that capitulation means not merely defeat, but the extinction of his world. The assault begins at dawn. Spanish soldiers advance through streets choked with rubble and corpses, their steel armor deflecting the weakened blows of starving defenders. Behind them surge the allied warriors, their hatred of Aztec dominance fueling a ferocity that matches any conquest the Mexica themselves once unleashed. House by house, temple by temple, the last district falls. The fighting reaches the great marketplace itself, where 60,000 once traded in the abundance of empire. Now the plaza becomes a killing ground. Aztec warriors form their final lines before the pyramid of Tlatelolco, fighting with obsidian clubs, with bare hands, with the desperate courage of those who have nothing left to lose. The allied warriors show no mercy, their vengeance for generations of tribute and sacrifice finally unleashed. By midday, organized resistance collapses. Cuauhtémoc attempts escape by canoe, hoping to reach the mainland and continue resistance from the mountains. Spanish brigantines intercept his vessel on the open water. The last emperor of the Aztecs is captured, his jade lip plug and golden ornaments marking him unmistakably as the prize the conquerors have sought. Brought before Cortés, Cuauhtémoc speaks words that echo through centuries. He asks only for death, having done everything possible to defend his city and his people. The Spanish commander refuses, recognizing the young emperor's value as a symbol of conquered authority. Cuauhtémoc will live 4 more years as a captive, eventually hanged during an expedition to Honduras on suspicion of plotting rebellion. The city that remains bears no resemblance to the metropolis that greeted Spanish eyes 2 years before. The great temples lie in ruins, their carved stones scattered, their sacred precincts desecrated. The canals run red with blood, choked with bodies. The chinampas that fed 200,000 rot beneath the August sun. Perhaps 100,000 have died in the siege alone, from combat, starvation, and disease combined. The survivors emerge from the rubble, walking through streets they no longer recognize. Women carry dead children. Warriors who once wore jaguar skins and eagle feathers stumble forward in rags, their pride broken alongside their weapons. The allied warriors loot what remains, claiming tribute goods, jade, gold, featherwork, anything of value that survived the destruction. The 5th sun has set. The cosmic age that began in the fires of Teotihuacan ends in the ashes of Tenochtitlan. The priests who maintained the sacred calendar, who fed the sun with human hearts, lie dead among their temples. The codices that recorded history burn or scatter. The knowledge of centuries begins its long dissolution into colonial silence. Yet even in destruction, something endures. The Nahuatl language survives on the lips of millions. The eagle devouring the serpent will rise again on a new nation's flag. The foundations of Tenochtitlan will support a new city called Mexico. The children of the 5th sun will remember. The conquerors build upon the ruins. Within months of Tenochtitlan's fall, Spanish architects begin dismantling the sacred precinct stone by stone. The great temples of Huitzilopochtli and Tlaloc yield their carved blocks to construct a cathedral that will take 2 centuries to complete. The palace of Moctezuma becomes the foundation for the viceroy's residence. Mexico City rises from the lake, its colonial grid imposed upon the ancient island, its churches standing where pyramids once touched the sky. Yet the Mexica do not vanish. They adapt, survive, transform. The Spanish need indigenous labor, indigenous knowledge, indigenous intermediaries. Nahuatl becomes the administrative language of New Spain alongside Castilian. Franciscan friars learn the tongue of the conquered to spread Christianity, creating dictionaries and grammars that preserve what conquest sought to destroy. Indigenous scribes continue painting codices, now recording Christian teachings alongside fragments of ancestral memory. The centuries pass. Colonial rule gives way to independence in 1821. The new Mexican nation searches for symbols to unite its fractured peoples. The founders reach back 300 years to claim the Aztec legacy as their own. The eagle perch upon the cactus, devouring the serpent, becomes the emblem of the republic. The name Mexico itself derives from Mexica. The conquered become the spiritual ancestors of the conqueror's descendants. Nahuatl endures against all probability. Nearly 2 million people speak it today across central Mexico, in mountain villages and urban neighborhoods, in homes where grandmothers teach grandchildren words that Moctezuma would recognize. The language has absorbed Spanish vocabulary, adapted to modern concepts, yet maintains its essential structure. Poets still compose in Nahuatl. Scholars still study its classical forms. The tongue of empire refuses to fall silent. Beneath Mexico City, the past keeps surfacing. In 1978, electrical workers discover a massive stone disk depicting the dismembered moon goddess Coyolxauhqui. Excavations reveal the Templo Mayor's foundations, its successive construction phases preserved like tree rings, recording imperial growth. Archaeologists uncover offerings of jade, obsidian, coral, and bone. The sacred precinct emerges from colonial rubble, now a museum where millions walk among the stones their ancestors carved. The Tenampas still float in Xochimilco, the last remnant of the lake system that once surrounded Tenochtitlan. Farmers tend plots their families have cultivated for generations, growing flowers and vegetables on artificial islands created by Aztec engineers. Tourists glide past on colorful boats, unknowingly traversing the same waterways where tribute canoes once carried the wealth of empire. The calendar stone gazes from museum walls, its concentric circles encoding cosmological knowledge that scholars still debate. The feathered serpent Quetzalcoatl appears in murals, sculptures, and national mythology. Day of the Dead celebrations blend pre-Hispanic ancestor veneration with Catholic observance. The past and present interweave like threads in a textile, inseparable, continuous, alive. 5 centuries after the siege, the children of the fifth son number in the millions. They carry indigenous blood, speak indigenous languages, maintain indigenous traditions transformed but unbroken. The empire fell, but the people endured. The temples crumbled, but the memory persisted. The codices burned, but the stories survived in new forms. Tenochtitlan lies buried beneath asphalt and concrete, yet it has never truly disappeared. Every excavation reveals another fragment. Every Nahuatl word spoken continues an unbroken chain reaching back to Aztlan. Every Mexican who sees the eagle on their flag inherits a legacy older than the conquest that sought to erase it. The fifth sun set on August 13th, 1521, but its children still walk the earth, still remember, still endure. Thank you for journeying through the complete history of the Aztec Empire. If these stories of ancient civilizations captivate you, please subscribe to the channel so you never miss our next documentary exploration into the forgotten worlds of human history.